Sienna Thompson, a low-wage meat packer, gave her last $30 to a hungry homeless child. 12 years later, when she was having her worst day, a millionaire knocked on her door. Her actions had been reported in newspapers all over the world. It was the same routine every time. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the clock would strike 5, signaling the end of the day shifts for dozens of workers at a meatpacking plant in Chicago. Sienna was one of those workers who ran down the same street after work to catch the subway home. She was exhausted at times due to the nature of the work. The slaughterhouse got a sizable consignment of pork on that day. Sienna had to carry and transfer a lot of meat from one side to the other despite having power equipment to assist her with the cutting. Despite the effort making her arms tremble, the task was eventually finished. Sienna would ride the subway home on days like this, sleeping for the majority of the trip. Co-workers of Sienna's, who also lived nearby, were there to wake her up so she wouldn't miss her stop. On this particular day, though, she was the only person in the wagon. It was a bad idea to sleep because if she did, she might wake up in a few stops and have to wait 40+ minutes before she could eventually fall asleep. Sienna fell asleep in the subway, so worrying didn't help. However, a man's soft, deep voice awakens her. "Lady, your stop is coming up, isn't it?" Sienna opened her eyes, puzzled by what was going on. "It's your stop next, isn't it?" the man asked. He expressed regret for shocking her. "For you to make the stop, I had to say something." He was in his 30s and a well-educated, well-dressed man. He didn't seem nasty in the way he spoke to her. Sienna thanked him and asked how he knew where she needed to get off. He never had to wake Sienna up because she was always with her coworkers, but today was different because she was alone, herself, and he didn't want her to miss her stop. He identified himself as Howard, and the two of them got off the train. As they strolled down the street together, they started talking. Howard's home was far away from Sienna's, and she still needed to take a bus before returning home. So he chose to wait with her at the bus stop. The talk flowed easily. They soon realized they had similar interests, worked nearby, and even knew some of the same people. "How come we've never seen each other before?" Sienna questioned. "I did notice you on the subway," he admitted awkwardly. Once the bus arrived, Howard said goodbye to her, but not before they made plans to meet up again the next day. In a single week, they met 5 times, with each meeting feeling more comfortable and natural than the one before it. They started dating after 3 weeks. In less than a year, Howard got down on one knee, opened a case containing a brilliant ring, and proposed to Sienna. Their bond was so strong and lovely. Sienna was ecstatic to the core. Years of dreams had led up to this moment, which she was now experiencing in reality. She agreed, and 3 months later, they were exchanging vows at the altar. Together, Howard and Sienna moved in and started living their normal lives. He worked as a programmer for a startup company, and she kept working her stressful job as a meat packer. But her life had become much more exciting since meeting her husband. Life wasn't perfect, but it was everything she could have hoped for. When Sienna looked at the man sleeping next to her, she thought she'd won the lottery. This feeling was only heightened a few years later when a pregnancy test revealed that they would be welcoming a new member to their family. Throughout the couple's lives, those 9 months were the longest. The newborn girl was given the name Ashley when she was born. Ashley was a beautiful, healthy girl who had come to brighten her parents' days even more. Ashley was growing and developing normally, but Howard began to experience headaches and chest pain, and they thought it is because of stress. The pain continued for a month, and Sienna wanted her husband to see a doctor, because she thought that maybe it's due to vascular or heart problems, but Howard thought he was too young for that. "Probably something I ate, too much salt in the food or something, just in case. I'm gonna start hiking, okay?" he said. When he began doing light runs at the end of the day, the pain subsided. Howard might be able to go 3 or 4 days without feeling anything, but it was only a matter of time before it surprised him again. He could have been playing with Ashley or watching TV when he felt a sharp twinge in his chest. "Howard, I'm concerned. You need to see a doctor," Sienna yelled at him anxiously, but Howard chalked it up to dehydration and began to hydrate more. "If the pain continues, I'll see a cardiologist," he says. 2 weeks later, when Howard awoke from his bed on a Saturday morning, he felt extreme dizziness and pain in his chest, causing him to fall back down while letting out a scream that startled Sienna and Ashley, who were in the living room. Howard was in pain, clutching his chest and unable to speak. Sienna immediately dialed 911. The doctors at the hospital informed Sienna that Howard was in the early stages of a heart attack and would be monitored indefinitely because they did not believe the danger was over. His blood pressure was dangerously high and he was unconscious. Howard's status had remained unchanged for several hours. Ashley was also worried about her dad. "Mommy, where's Daddy? Is he sick?" she asked. "It's nothing, my love. He'll be back soon, you'll see. How about we go to the park for some ice cream when he gets out?" Her mother comforted her young daughter. Sienna had no idea what would happen, but she thought Howard was too young and in good health to have heart problems. She could only hope that he would feel better soon and the doctors would figure out what was causing him pain. There was an emergency at the hospital 2 hours later. Nurses and even the doctor who was treating Howard rushed down the hall. Sienna's heart almost leapt from her mouth, but she didn't want to worry Ashley. It had been the most terrifying 30 minutes of her life. She remained focused on the corridor, hoping for good news. When the doctor arrived, Sienna's world fell apart. The medical team had attempted in vain to revive him. Howard died of a heart attack that was far more severe than the first. "I'm sorry," the doctor said. "Let's prepare the body now." Those words replayed in Sienna's mind like a nightmare. She didn't want to believe it, but she also wanted to scream. She had no choice but to kneel and tightly hug her daughter. "Mommy, is Daddy not well?" Ashley asked. The woman was speechless because she couldn't believe what had just happened. So she just cried until her tears soaked the child's clothes. Ashley must have been moved by what had occurred because she cried as well. Sienna kept her spirits up after Howard died. She and Ashley both missed Howard. To meet her responsibilities, Sienna began working longer hours at the meatpacking plant. Her coworkers were aware she was having difficulties and admired her tenacity. Sienna was determined that her daughter would not lack in anything. On the other hand, the extra 2 or 3 hours of work each day were exhausting, and the reward was hardly worth it. She hoped for a raise or a promotion, but neither had happened yet. On her way to work in the subway one morning, a thin, pale girl ran into Sienna. She appeared to be sick and terrified. "I apologize, ma'am. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Could you please give me some change?" said the child. She spoke quickly and softly, most likely out of embarrassment at what she was doing. Sienna searched the area for the girl's mother or father, but she appeared to be alone. Everyone in the carriage was completely unconcerned about the starving girl in front of them. As she rested her arms on her stomach, she observed the girl. "Poor thing," Sienna thought. "You must be in terrible pain from being so hungry." In that situation, it was impossible not to notice the girl and imagine that it was her daughter. Sienna took out her wallet and discovered $30 and a few coins. She handed over $30 and 2 sandwiches she had brought from home to eat during her breaks. She could go without food that day because she would eat later at home, but that child had nothing. The young lady approached, embarrassed, and took the money and snacks. She looked at Sienna through tears and sighed a heartfelt, "Thank you. I'll pay you, okay? I promise," said the little one as she exited the subway. Despite her hunger, Sienna worked hard that day. She could have gone to the canteen and gotten something to eat, but she'd given the child all of her money. Her remaining cash would pay for her return home. Despite being exhausted and hungry, she had no regrets about her actions. She spent the rest of the day hoping that everything with the girl had gone well. Fanny, the child she met on the subway, came from a troubled home. Her parents struggled with drugs and alcohol and spent the majority of the day completely unaware that they had a child at all. However, the young girl imagined a better life for herself. She had no idea how she was going to get there, but she knew it was doable. Sienna had been at the meatpacking plant for 12 years and had been promoted twice. She had more money now and was able to get home a little earlier. Every afternoon, Ashley would ride her roller skates around the neighborhood with her school friends. That day, she jumped and zigzagged on her wheels, riding over ramps and railings. She had talent, but she decided to race another classmate and ended up tripping on an asphalt crack, landing hard on her head and back. Ashley's friends rushed over to see how she was doing. She lay down responding, but unable to stand. Her mother was notified after some witnesses called an ambulance. When Sienna was called to the hospital, she was at work. She bolted past the front desk, practically commanding the attendants to inform her of Ashley's condition. "Please relax, ma'am. The girl is not in danger of dying," a nurse explained. "Please tell me everything. What exactly?" Sienna yelled, terrified. It didn't take long for the doctor to show up. Following Howard's death, Sienna was terrified of doctors and hospitals. The doctor called the mother into his office and patiently explained that Ashley would be fine, but that she had severely injured her spine by striking her head and back on the floor. As a result, the girl would almost certainly be unable to walk. Sienna wept uncontrollably. She couldn't believe what she was witnessing. "I must be cursed," she exclaimed. "Calm down, ma'am. All is not lost. There are excellent surgeons in the city who specialize in this type of spine reconstruction. Ashley may walk again. The issue is that these treatments are costly. In some cases, they exceed 6 figures," said the doctor. Sienna couldn't afford such a large expenditure. "Even if she sold everything she owned, if I sell the apartment, we'll be homeless and still won't have enough to pay for a surgery like that," she explained. The doctor looked down at the ground, knowing that what she said, sadly, was true. Ashley was not released from the hospital for nearly a month. She had to use a wheelchair to get around and accept her physical disability. The hospital bill had been very high just to stabilize her health. Sienna's ability to pay for more advanced care for her daughter was hampered by this debt. It had taken her years to save everything she could to pay the bills, provide primary care for her daughter, and pay off the hospital's debt. While Sienna sacrificed, Ashley grew up in a wheelchair and became a more beautiful young lady. When the girl's mother saw how depressed she was, it broke her heart and she decided to start an online fundraising campaign. Ashley's corrective surgery would be the sole beneficiary of the funds. Although it was a cause that was widely discussed on social media, very few people donated enough to cover all the expenses. The funds raised enabled some tests, but not surgery. Sienna thought it was over and that nothing else could be done. She sometimes cried in the bathroom at work whenever she thought of how many opportunities her daughter would miss because of that mishap. She didn't realize it yet, but one of her good deeds from the past was about to catch up to her. On August 15, 2019, someone knocked on her door after all hope had been lost. When Sienna opened it, she saw a young woman who was well-dressed and attractive. Behind her, a high-end vehicle was parked in the driveway. "Hello, I'm sure you won't recognize me, but I promised you something a while back," said the mysterious young lady. She then took out her wallet, which held $30. She took out the notes and handed them to Sienna. Everything became clear to Sienna at that point. When she looked at the young woman in the eyes, the embarrassed expression she'd worn for years had vanished. That hungry, pale, and skinny 10-year-old had grown into a lovely and healthy young lady in her 30s. Sienna hugged her and invited her inside. She would never forget the name, Fanny, as the woman introduced herself. She stated that she would never forget how the snacks and money she obtained on the subway that day saved her life. Fanny's gaze was drawn to Ashley as she entered the room in her wheelchair. Fanny stated that she had been fortunate. She'd been homeless and hungry before becoming a successful young business owner. Sienna was relieved to see that the situation of the girl had improved. "You must be blessed. You sure have all the light in the world," Sienna said to Fanny. Fanny thanked her and remembered the promise she had made years before. She explained that she found Sienna through Ashley's fundraiser. "I recognized you as soon as I saw your picture, so I decided to come here myself to thank you for helping me when I needed it the most." Fanny explained, "The $30 you gave me at that time saved my life, so I'd like to support you and your daughter right now." When Sienna heard this, she thanked her and told her that any assistance was greatly appreciated, but the surgery would cost $250,000 and that they would most likely need more donations, even if the campaign lasted years. "I'm sorry if I wasn't clear," Fanny said as she took Sienna's hands into her own. "You won't need any more donations." Sienna was stunned for a few moments before bursting into tears. Her daughter had been in a wheelchair for so long that she had forgotten how to walk and run, but she yearned to be able to do so all over again. Fanny stayed with them for the rest of the day, listening to their stories and ensuring that neither mother nor daughter gave up hope. Fanny began paying for all of Ashley's tests and treatments a few weeks later. Her surgery went well and was performed at a specialized center in Chicago. Several television networks covered the story, and the girl's recovery was closely monitored. Ashley took her first steps on her own in years. She still needed help, but it was only a matter of time before she could walk again on her own. Fanny held Sienna's hands as she sobbed in shock at what was happening. "It's a miracle, my God," she exclaimed, delighted. Ashley was walking unaided and with surprising ease for someone who had been in a wheelchair for 9 months. She walked confidently and purposefully. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Crown Luxury, and we will see you in the next video.